Happy Monday! Welcome to your Monday edition of Locked On Raptors. Sean here with you as always. And on today's show, I am joined as always, as I am on Mondays, by Vivek Jacob from Raptors.com. And we are going to dig into the Raptors' loss to the Denver Nuggets 110-109 with a Nikola Jokic block on OG Anunoby, sealing the deal for the Nuggets. We're going to dig into our biggest takeaways from the game. We're going to talk about OG Anunoby's subpar performance, but also the overall really strong process that we saw from the Raptors in this one. Plus, Scottie Barnes, does he come up with a due to the game segment? We'll see. Maybe that was a spoiler I didn't mean to lay out there, but hey, I can't get it back in the can now. So let's get to it. Today's episode of Locked On Raptors with Big V.
You are Locked On Raptors, your daily Toronto Raptors podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's going on? Welcome to episode number 1118 of Locked On Raptors for Monday, February the 14th. Happy Valentine's Day out there, pals. I am your host, Sean Woodley of RaptorsHQ.com. You can find me on Twitter, as always, at WoodleySean. You can find the show at Locked On Raptors. And, of course, you can find the podcast free and available on all your favorite podcast platforms. You can go subscribe, follow, rate, review, all that good stuff. Plus, you can go to YouTube and join the over 1,600 satisfied customers who have subscribed to the YouTube page. Please go ahead and do that. It's very much appreciated, as it is appreciated that you're making this your first listen of the day. All right, on today's show, we have a very narrow loss to the Denver Nuggets to talk about, where lots of interesting things happened, but really, it was mostly just a game where two good teams played one another with two superstar players just laying haymakers, and it was an absolute blast to watch. And I am joined today by Vivek Jacob from Raptors.com. It is V-Day, technically today, but every Monday is V-Day here on Locked On Raptors. How's it going, pal?
It's going well. Happy Valentine's Day to everyone out there. And, you look at the Raptors, there's a lot to love. And...
Oh, baby, you're a professional. We love to see it. Let's dive into this game, shall we? We will get into some thoughts on, I think, OG Anunoby's game in this one and where it kind of let the Raptors down. We're going to give out the due to the game at the end of the show, but we should dive into our biggest takeaways. Big V, take it away. What was your biggest takeaway from the Raptors' loss, their first loss in 9 games on Saturday against those dastardly Nuggets?
Yeah, I think watching the game, whenever this type of team is going to go up against a Jokic or an Embiid, you're trying to see how the Raptors would defend them. And so early on, it was OG Anunoby, and pretty much after a couple of dribbles, you'd see the double, at least around the post. When Jokic was up top, then you'd just try to, pester him as much as possible and get the ball out of his hands. But I thought Jokic was incredible and played bully ball really well. And I think I would have preferred to see a harder double, like right off the catch in the post. And so I think that's part of what contributed to OG's foul trouble. Sorry. And so I think that was something that you probably look back on. Pascal Siakam talked after the game about how they kind of allowed Jokic to get in a rhythm, and that set the tone for the rest of the game, where maybe they could have had a bit more separation, a bit more cushion to close it out. But I think, how you come at those guys right off the top is really important. And the Raptors probably weren't as successful as they needed to be.
Yeah, and it's so difficult with Jokic, right? Because, if you start sending it early, he's probably going to adapt to that too, right? And then start just throwing those passes out a little early, and then you're stuck in your rotation all over again. He's very good at basketball, as it turns out. And I know, whenever the Raptors play one of these hulking centers, which there's like 2 or 3 of in the entire NBA, the referendum on the positional sort of, ethos of the team and the lack of a center always kind of comes up. And for me, I'm fine. No one's stopping Jokic or Embiid, man. Unless you have Marc Gasol on your team, I don't think you really stand that much of a chance. And so for me, I just feel like you got to take your losses with those guys and just do your best. And yeah, they probably could have at least sort of altered the timing of those doubles a little bit more, right? Like maybe it's not you send it early every time. Maybe you sort of delay it once in a while and you try to keep Jokic on his toes the way you have to do with any great offensive player. Like one look is not ever going to be enough. But I think that's a well taken point that, it was a little bit too nonchalant, just sort of waiting for those doubles to come. Because if you give any extra processing time for Jokic to figure things out, he's going to absolutely destroy you as he did in this game. Although, honestly, you look at the final line for Jokic and he goes 28 points, 15 boards, 6 assists, 10 of 16 from the field. And it feels like a quiet game for him almost. Like that's how good he's been this season. It's like, hey, we held him to like mostly under his season averages. What a bloody success this team has had. But yeah, he's just he's a really, really excellent player who's difficult to handle. As it happens, though, the Raptors have one of those guys on their team as well in the form of Pascal Siakam. And my biggest takeaway from this game was mostly just one of awe and excitement. Yes, the Raptors lost, and that was a bummer, and we can dig into how that took place and some of the things that let them down. But I was just so blown away by Siakam's level of control in this game. I think you could argue that he was the best player on the floor in a game in which Nikola Jokic was also on the floor, which is insane. He had 35, 10, and 7. Obviously, Jokic was unbelievable as well, but just like the efficiency, 16 to 22, 3 of 7 from downtown, and just doing the thing that we've seen very regularly from Siakam lately, where every time he has the ball in his hands, you feel like he's in control and he knows exactly where he's pulling the defense and what he's looking to do, and B, you know that he feels it, right? And like he knows that he's going to be able to find his own shot, whatever, or a shot for somebody else. However it is that the defense is playing him, there's going to be an avenue for him to come up with a look. And it's just been a masterclass to watch him on display lately. He's not going to win Player of the Week this week because DeMar DeRozan averaged like 9,000 points a game over the last week or so, but he had a better week this past week than he did the week he won Player of the Week. And it's just really, really cool to see him going toe-to-toe with a guy as good as Jokic and feeling like he belongs in that conversation. I mean, we've kind of each week on this show considered like Siakam's, spot in the hierarchy of the league. It feels like every week he's climbing like 3-4 spots in the power rankings. That's how good he's been. Like, do you have any thoughts on the way Siakam played? He's played like this. There's only so much you can say. He continues to play this way basically every time out, but this felt like a more sort of all-encompassing performance than we've even seen so far.
Yeah, he was spectacular. I mean, to think that you had Pascal going back and forth with Jokic and, giving the Nuggets as good as the Jokic was giving the Raptors is pretty staggering. And, even late, like there was the one shot he made with the shot clock winding down where it's a long two, it's, under duress, and he cans it no problem. And it's like, okay, the guy is just absolutely on another planet right now. I don't think anyone has a chance against him in single coverage. You saw that over and over in this game.
Yeah.
And whenever the doubles came, whenever the triples came, you saw him make the right read and make the pass. And frankly, I was surprised Fred VanVleet missed that shot at the end. I know we talk about OG's putback getting rejected, but once Pascal made that pass, I thought Fred was going to knock it down, and that would have been another perfect read. So, Pascal is balling out. You think about specifically this season in terms of playmaking forwards. There's Giannis, there's KD. You can put Jimmy Butler there, and then Pascal's right there.
He's been just unbelievable, man, and it's really, really fun to watch him just kind
of... that guy. I forgot about that guy.
Yeah, he's fine, whatever. Talk to me when he's got a record above 25 and 31 or whatever the hell it is. Yeah, I mean, it's just been such a delight. And just to keep a tracker going, on Friday, I kind of ran through the numbers for Siakam when it comes to his PER on the season. Again, a stat nobody cares about anymore, but it's worth tracking in the context of where this season for Siakam slots in among other Raptors' great seasons. He's now at a 25.5 PER on the season, which is 0.3 points shy of Kawhi Leonard's franchise record, and now ahead by half of a full point ahead of Vince Carter from 2000, 2001, and Chris Bosh from 2009, 2010. So the company is elite, and it's just been an absolute treat to watch this guy, kind of finish this full sort of circle transformation from what he was a couple years ago, this really, really excellent player who made all NBA, goes through these sort of doldrums of his career, and then comes out an even better and more all-encompassing player on the other side. It's hard to think of a more satisfying player arc in recent years to watch. And so, we will continue on here. I do want to dig into the late game offense a little bit and talk about those final possessions where they got some good stuff, but people still seemed kind of mad. We are going to get to that in just 1 second here on the podcast. But first, I want to tell you about our friends over at Built Bar, who are making the best tasting protein bars money can buy. You got to check them out if you are looking for some sort of treat replacement, if you are looking to avoid those snacks late at night where you're going to be, putting in 300-400 calories into your guts because you just feel bored and you want to eat. Well, Built Bars are a great solution for that. I struggle with this a lot. I am a late night snacker. It is a bad trait. I do it all the time though, but Built Bars help me do a late night snack without feeling so bad about it. And that's because they contain 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 grams of net carbs, and 17 grams of protein in your average bar. Compare that to the candy bar or whatever else you're going to have. It's going to have hundreds of calories, dozens of grams of sugar, and dozens of grams of net carbs. It's just not something you should be having at 1 a.m. Probably shouldn't be having anything at 1 a.m., but if you're going to, a Built Bar is the great way to go. They've got flavors for everybody: mint brownie, coconut almond. They've got white chocolate cookies and cream now. It's a limited time flavor up on the site. They have those limited time flavors all the time, so you got to check them out. It's Valentine's Day. They probably have some special treats up there today, so go to Built.com and check them out. Use the promo code LOCKED15 and get 15% off your order. That is the promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at Built.com. And we continue on your first listen of the day here on Locked On Raptors with Vivek Jacob of Raptors.com. All right, Big V, let's dig into some of the reasons why the Raptors lost this game. Of course, the big reason is that Nikola Jokic blocked the hell out of OG Anunoby on the final possession after he collected an offensive rebound on a missed Fred VanVleet 3. I thought the late game process for the Raptors in this game was absolutely fantastic. It drew back to a conversation we had with Louis Zatzman a couple of weeks ago where we power ranked our favorite pick and roll combinations within the Raptors starting five. And the one that we both had number one in some order was Siakam Fred pick and roll as the number one option the Raptors can go with. And it seems the Raptors know that as well. They got the big Fred 3 late out of that action, and then they basically ran the same thing. Pascal with Fred screening for him in the final possession of the game. Pascal sees 2 at the free throw line. He then kicks it over to Fred in the exact same spot, and he misses the 3. This spawned a bit of conversation among the more, I guess, deranged reaches of Raptors fandom, which, hey, maybe that's something we shouldn't be entertaining here, but I do think it's interesting to talk about. The sort of hierarchy of the offense in late games. There was, why didn't Pascal shoot it? He got doubled. That's why he didn't shoot it. And he made the smart play because that's what he's doing right now. He's on like a 8-week run of making the smart play every time, basically. And then you get Fred VanVleet. Like, it's not a bad shot. A wide open Fred VanVleet 3. Yeah, that's a pretty comfortable place to be if you are the Raptors. So, I mean, maybe there isn't even a conversation to have here. He made an excellent play. Fred missed it because you miss shots in basketball half the time or more, and that's just the way it works. And then Jokic made the play that the best player alive tends to make, which is block OG into oblivion to close the game. Where are you right now on the sort of late game offensive hierarchy? Like, do you feel like Gary Trent Jr. should be getting more action? I've seen it floating around like, Gary Trent should be the number 2 option behind Pascal. Doesn't really work that way. And I think, I have my own thoughts on this and how I sort of feel a hierarchy should work or shouldn't, but thoughts on the way that late game offense worked against the Nuggets. And, are we even talking about this and as sort of a point of conversation if Fred hits a 3, which he does 46% of the time when he catches and shoots?
I think there's been like maybe certain moments over the course of the last month or so where Gary has been feeling it and maybe he hasn't got a touch in a while. I think there was actually I can't even remember now, but there was a game where he was really hot and he was with the bench unit early fourth. Then he came out, and then he came in for the closing group, and then he hadn't got a touch in a while. And that was a bit of a weird situation. Sorry, it's blanking on my mind which game that was.
It's okay. They played the same teams over the course of 2 weeks. It's difficult to keep all those games in order. They won them all, but basically, that's what matters.
But no, in terms of the hierarchy, absolutely for me, the number one option is the Siakam Fred pick and roll. I think that's something that's working really well for them. In terms of other options, because of, and I don't think it was really an option against the Nuggets because of how poorly OG Anunoby played. But
yeah,
I think, we saw a little bit in the bubble of that Kyle Lowry, OG Anunoby screening action. And you look at the way Fred VanVleet has taken on the mantle, I think you could get a bit of those actions going as well. Or, depending on what the matchup is, you could get really funky and have Siakam and OG in it, right?
Yeah.
And so I think those are some backup options. But to me, it's pretty clear the primary is Pascal and Fred, and you trust them to make the right decisions from whatever stems from it. So I've got no issues with it. I mean, Fred makes that shot, no one's saying a word. So
yeah,
I don't really see what the big deal is.
Yeah, it's not a big deal at all. And, I think the late game offense, we go into the most recent example, and then that's like, oh, let's raise our fist because I didn't score late. I mean, they've been really good in crunch time all season long. We've cited the numbers. Right now, they are currently 10th in crunch time net rating. They played 124 clutch minutes, which is number 5 in the NBA, and they have a plus 7.0 net rating, a 112.3 offensive rating, a 105.3 defensive rating. They've been really good in late game situations. It just happened that they lost to the Nuggets because the Nuggets have the best player on earth right now, and that happens sometimes. But the process was there. And, there's many outcomes where the Raptors win that game, and you're not talking about this. I also think it's actually a feature and not a bug that the Raptors have a bunch of guys who could, in theory, take those late game shots, right? Fred got it in this one, but and it does end up that Pascal often doesn't get them because he demands so much attention in these late game situations that he's often having to pass out. Otherwise, it's going to be a silly shot that he's put up, and then people will complain about that. And it's, to me, a real nice luxury to have that when Siakam sees 2 to the ball or 3 to the ball in these late game situations, he's A, able to make the reads, and B, he's passing to one of Fred VanVleet, Gary Trent Jr., Scottie Barnes, or OG Anunoby, all of whom have made big clutch late game shots this season. It's how things are supposed to work, honestly, I think. And so I have no problem with the way they're running things late in games. I did have a problem with OG getting blocked into the into the sea by Jokic. Not that OG did anything necessarily wrong. There was no time on the clock. He went up, but this is just my segue into talking about OG's game. How about that? He played 37 minutes on Saturday, 9 points, 5 boards, 4 assists, 4 of 16 shooting, 1 of 5 from downtown. I think it's safe to say that you get a slightly better version of OG, and the Raptors probably win this game. What were your thoughts on OG, having a down performance? It's his first in a while. He's been really good in his role of late. Any concern there? Any sort of troubling signs you saw in this one, or was this just a bad shooting night that ended up costing them?
Yeah, I think it's just an off night, right? He's been playing really well. The team's been playing really well, so it sucks that it comes in this game where you're trying to keep that win streak going against a solid team. And so, it's unfortunate, but I mean, there's no level of concern whatsoever. I think OG's been really good of late. You look at, the few games he needed coming off the hip injury and the COVID isolation. I think he's definitely back in a groove. And so these nights are bound to happen over the course of an 82 game season, and it just is what it is. So, the other thing that continues to get exposed is you have Fred, Gary, and OG as your dependable volume 3-point shooters, right?
Yeah.
And if one of them is not going, it's tough. And if 2 of them are not going, then it's really, really tough. And so when Gary and OG are combined 2 for 10 from 3, that makes the challenge that much more steep. And so the fact that Pascal was able to do what he did all night, and Fred alongside him to keep it close and give them a chance to win, speaks to where this team is at right now.
Yeah, I mean, this goes to what I was talking about after the Rockets game last week, where they didn't play a very good game, but because they now have a bit of a margin for error because of how well Pascal is playing and how, cohesive that starting five has been, like there is a little bit more cushion for things to go wrong and still have a chance to win. And I think earlier this season, if you have a 2 of 10 combined night from Gary Trent Jr. and OG Anunoby, you're not within sniffing distance of the Nuggets. It's not even close. And the fact that you have a guy like Siakam who's raising your level as a team to this degree, and you get a great performance from Fred as well, and you got some pretty decent contributions, nothing crazy high production wise, but some good contributions off the bench, like that helps to minimize that, expand that margin for error to the point where you can have not your best game and still be 1 point off of beating the Nuggets. So yeah, overall, it's a bummer they lost. And I think the sort of specter of the Celtics never losing games ever again, and the race for the 6th seed is maybe kind of clouding the, it should just be happiness, right? They've won 8 of their last 9. Like it makes it feel like it's a bit more of a gut punch when you lose a game like that. But overall, the margin for error being expanded, I think, is kind of the biggest story with this team right now. And it was on display once again in that Nuggets game. Another guy who helped sort of carry things along as there were some struggling performances from OG and Gary Trent is our dude of the game. We're going to get to him in just 1 second here, and we will round out the show. But before we do that, I want to tell you about our pals over at BetOnline. And football season might be over now that the big game was done last night, but basketball is in full steam for both pro and college hoops. From the latest odds, totals, play performance props to where the next fired coach is going to land, BetOnline.net is the number one spot for all your sports betting needs. BetOnline remains the best spot for your sports scores, podcasts, and news all season long. And it's not just basketball. BetOnline.net is your source for hockey, boxing, UFC odds, right to your favorite Olympic coverage and information as well. Plus, baseball eventually will be back. Maybe we'll see. You'll be able to, put some money down on those futures bets and whatnot too for your wonderful Toronto Blue Jays, for example. Head to the website today or use your mobile device and and learn more about the trends and action over at BetOnline. It is where the game starts. And we round out your first listen of the day with Big V here, and we move into the dude of the game, the segment where we honor someone who did the stuff in the cracks, the grout fillers, if you will. There's tying all that ceramic tile together with their dude-esque performances. And today's dude of the game is Scottie Barnes, who on Saturday night, 17 points, 5 boards, 1 assist, 3 steals, 7 of 14 shooting. And boy, oh boy, he made the people who were thirsty for Rashawn Holmes floaters eat their words, because who needs Rashawn Holmes doing floaters when you can have literally Scottie Barnes doing the same thing on top of all the other wonderful things he does. Thought this was a really, really good Scottie game. What were your impressions of the work he did as a sort of outlet to aid in the scoring effort when Pascal and Fred saw extra attention?
I really liked that when he had opportunities to go right at Jokic, he did take them. And I think that's something that, regardless of the opponent, regardless of who he's going up against, I want to see him do, right? Like, he's proven if he can go right through Nikola Vucevic and, body Jokic a little bit, at least enough to get his shot off, then he should be able to do that against anyone, right? And I think we're still, it's part of, his growth process to get to that point where he's got enough nastiness in him to say, I'm going to do this every single time if the matchup is there. And so I think that's the part of his game I really like in and around the paint. And you needed that complementary piece, like you said, when Gary and OG aren't firing. And so his offense was really important in this one. And, on the bright side, you will say, wow, maybe, he kind of waits and sees who's going and who's not. When he sees that, the team is looking for him to sort of move up that pecking order and be that third guy, or some nights that second guy, like, hey, he is trying to do it for sure.
Yeah, man. It just seems like every situation you throw him in, he is finding a way to succeed in it, right? And like right now, he's basically playing center most of the time when he's on the floor. And this is, less than a year removed from him playing backup point guard in college. And he's just learned the role. And yeah, it's not perfect all the time. The defensive rotations are not there. He's not that backline guy that you always want. But man, like, the way I think he's filled in as a center offensively has been really, really encouraging. And then it's just augmented by these random little ISOs he'll run. They'll do this 2, 3, 4 times a game, depending on the matchup. It's just like, all right, Scottie, go to work. And then he usually does, and he usually scores over someone tall. Jokic being the guy, the victim in this one a couple times. Like, I'm just blown away by just how, like, enormous he looks in comparison with the most enormous guys in the league. And I'm sitting here like, why did anyone ever think they needed a center? Like, he's enormous. He is a center. He's playing like a center right now. Let him keep on cooking. And like, he's just going to have this sort of repertoire, you would think, as he continues to level up years, in 2 years, 3 years from now, like as he expands his perimeter oriented game, having this like set of reps where he's kind of been thrust into this role as a center. It's kind of like the inverse. Remember back when the Wolves had Zach LaVine and they had to play him at point guard for a while, and it didn't go super well. It was, there was up and down, and there, you would have big games and rough games, but he just kind of learned that on-ball duty, and that's obviously served him well in his process of becoming this lead guard for the Bulls. This is kind of like that with Barnes playing center. Like, he's not going to be a center primarily, you would think, throughout his career. But getting him these reps in his rookie season in that spot where he's filling in the gaps, he's seeping into space and, working as a cutter off of guys, mirroring ball handlers and putting up those floaters and finishing around the basket, like, that can only mean good things for his overall game, as he grows into a more mature, all-encompassing player. It's just really, really exciting stuff to see, man. And I think he was really, really awesome in this game against the Nuggets, and had they pulled this one out, I think he would have been one of the bigger reasons why, in addition to Pascal and Fred, of course, for their work they did. Any last lingering thoughts here, man? You get the Eastern Conference race heating up. The Celtics never lose. You've got the Nuggets are really interesting and might be getting Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr. back. I put some money down when that news first came out last week. I hopped immediately to BetOnline and put down $25 on the Nuggets to win at 40-1. Before that news, or when that news drops. So I'm going to win a lot of money if the Nuggets win the title. But and I'm feeling pretty good about that, honestly, after watching that game and seeing Jokic in the flesh again. But yeah, any last lingering thoughts here before we round out this show?
Well, with regards to your bet, I will say I was there at the game, and pregame, Jamal went through a pretty intense individual workout, and I thought, he looked pretty good. He was getting pretty damn close to doing the Kitchener shuffle, and so, and even long after, how it is pregame, like everyone gets through sort of their scheduled times, and then they're all back in the locker room. Jamal was there for a while longer, and he was kind of going. He had one Nuggets assistant on one end of the court, another Nuggets assistant on the other end of the court, and he was just going back and forth. Up and down, trying to attack. And so it was really good to see, because obviously we all want to see him playing basketball. And those title chances definitely go up if he's on the court. The last thing I will just kind of throw in, when you were talking about Scottie and you made the Zach LaVine example, I'll throw one that hits closer to home is, those reps that Pascal was getting at point last season. And you're kind of looking at some of those awkward moments and saying, maybe this isn't something for him. And now you look at him, and those reps have obviously helped him. And so, obviously that's at the point, but, the same sort of basic principles can be applied to the reps that Scottie is getting at center.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it turns out when you are playing point guard and your outlets are Gary Trent Jr., OG Anunoby, and Fred VanVleet, it's a little easier than it is when it's DeAndre Bembry and Stanley Johnson. So he got reps in the toughest possible conditions, just like wearing the like, what is it? When you train in like water when you're going to space to like build up your resistance to weightlessness, like that's kind of the deal that Siakam was going through last year. But yeah, that's going to round out today's episode of the podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll be back again tomorrow. I'm going to go solo to break down the game against the Pelicans tonight. That should be fun. And then on Wednesday, James Herbert's going to stop by the podcast, and we are going to handicap the race in the Eastern Conference for the 6th seed. The Celtics continue to win. The Nets continue to lose. The Raptors continue to be very, very good as well. We're going to break down, who's got the inside track at the 6th seed, who should teams be fearful of the most. We will get to that on Wednesday with our pal James Herbert from CBSSports.com. And then the rest of the week, I have yet to plan, so we'll figure that out as we go. But until then, Big V, anything you want to promote for the good people out there?
Just the usual stuff, Raptors.com, CBC Sports, Complex Canada. I did a little profile recently on Gordon Rowe, who's one of the finalists for the OVO Creators Program. And so if you want to go check that out, his art was featured during the Nuggets game. And so if you want to check that out, you can head to Raptors.com.
Awesome stuff. As always, man, thanks for being here. You can find me on Twitter at Woodley Sean. You can subscribe to, rate, review, tell a friend, etc. Wherever you get your podcasts on all your favorite podcast platforms. And go to YouTube, hit that big red subscribe button. It really, really helps. It makes me feel good inside. So why wouldn't you go do it? Then what else we got? Yeah, that's it. Thanks for making us your first listen of the day. Go make your second listen of the day. Locked on NHL, as over on that podcast right now, in addition to covering the goings on in the actual NHL throughout the Olympics are being covered every single day with a show we're calling Olympic Hockey Daily. Rachel Donner and Ann Kimmel carrying you through, covering the women's and men's tournaments in just a wonderful, comprehensive way. Really no one covering these tournaments as in-depth in audio form as Rachel and Ann are right now. So go make sure you listen to Olympic Hockey Daily if you're interested. You've got the women's gold medal game coming up this week, Canada-US on a collision course. That is going to be a ton of fun, and it will be fully previewed and recapped over at Olympic Hockey Daily. The men's tournament, of course, being covered as well, but the women's tournament is the star of the show. Come on, that Canada-USA game is going to be amazing. So go and check that out to get prepped, and we will talk to you very soon, tomorrow, in fact, with another episode of Locked On Raptors. Bye-bye.